John Report.
Pursuant to order made on Wednesday, September 23rd, 2020, the House will now proceed to taking of the deferred recorded division on the motion of Mr. Chong relating to the business of supply. Call in the members. La liste des députés.
The list of members voting by video conference has now been established for use by the table. The question is the following one.
Chong, seconded by Mr. Paulus, moved that given that, one, the People's Republic of China, under the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party, is threatening Canada's national interest and its values, including Canadians of Chinese origin within Canada's borders. Two, it is essential that Canada have a strong and principled foreign policy backed by action in concert with its allies. The House call upon the government to A, make a decision on Huawei's involvement in Canada's 5G network within 30 days of the adoption of this motion, and B, develop a robust plan, as Australia has done, to combat China's growing foreign operations here in Canada and its increasing intimidation of Canadians living in Canada, and table it within 30 days of the adoption of this motion. Que tous ceux qui appuient la motion.
All those in favour of the motion participating in person will please rise.
Mrs. Halislav.
Mr. Martel.
Mr. Martel.
Mrs. Block.
Mrs. Block.
Mr. Doherty.
Mr. Doherty.
Monsieur Reyes.
Mr. Reyes.
Ms. Bergen.
Ms. Bergen.
Monsieur Blaney-Bellechasse-les-Etchemin-Lévis.
Monsieur Blaney-Bellechasse.
Bellechasse-les-Etchemin-Lévis.
Bon, voilà.
Mrs. Gallant.
Mrs. Gallant.
Ms. Ota Calgary-Skyview.
Ms. Soda, Calgary-Skyview.
Ms. Gray.
Ms. Gray.
Mr. Richards.
Mr. Richards.
Mrs. Wagentall.
Mrs. Wagentall.
Mr. Cooper.
Mr. Cooper.
Mr. Baldinelli.
Mr. Baldinelli.
Mr. Seaback.
Mr. Seaback.
Mr. Sloan.
Mr. Sloan.
Mr. Zimmer.
Mr. Zimmer.
Mr. Morrison.
Mr. Morrison.
Mr. Ruff.
Mr. Ruff.
Mr. Vierson.
Mr. Vierson.
Mr. Chong.
Mr. Chong.
Monsieur Blanchet.
Mr. Blanchet.
Monsieur Terrien.
Monsieur Terrien.
Madame de Bellefeuille.
Madame de Bellefeuille.
Madame Bérubé.
Madame Bérubé.
Monsieur Sainte-Marie.
Monsieur Sainte-Marie.
Madame Desbiens.
Madame Desbiens.
Madame Larouche.
Madame Larouche.
Mr. Singh.
Mr. Singh.
Ms. Collins.
Ms. Collins.
Ms. Blaney, North Island, Powell River.
Ms. Blaney, North Island, Powell River.
Mr. Backrack.
Mr. Backrack.
Mr. Cannings.
Mr. Cannings.
Mr. Julian.
Mr. Julian.
All those opposed to the motion and participating in person will please rise.
Monsieur Trudeau.
Monsieur Trudeau.
Mr. Blair.
Mr. Blair.
Monsieur Rodriguez.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Monsieur Lemetti.
Monsieur Lemetti.
Monsieur Champagne.
Monsieur Champagne.
Ms. McKenna.
Ms. McKenna.
Monsieur Guilbeault.
Monsieur Guilbeault.
Mrs. Schult.
Monsieur Schult.
Monsieur Duclos.
Monsieur Duclos.
Ms. Gould.
Ms. Gould.
Mr. Holland.
Mr. Holland.
Ms. Murray.
Ms. Murray.
Mr. Gerritsen.
Mr. Gerritsen.
Mr. Lamoureux.
Mr. Lamoureux.
Madame Fortier.
Madame Fortier.
Ms. Ing.
Ms. Ing.
Ms. Dillon.
Ms. Dillon.
Monsieur El Khoury,
Mr. El Khoury,
Mr. Oliphant,
Mr. Oliphant,
Mr. Scarpalegia,
Mr. Scarpalegia,
Mr. Van Bynen,
Mr. Van Bynen,
Ms. Haidu,
Ms. Haidu,
Monsieur Robillard,
Mr. Rubia,
Mr. Morrissey,
Mr. Morrissey,
Mr. Ananda Sangri,
Mr. Ananda Sangari,
Mr. Saini,
Mr. Singh,
Monsieur Lauzon,
Mr. Lozon,
Mr. Badaway,
Mr. Badaway,
Mr. Dollywall,
Motion.
Wilson Raybould, 4 pour.
On n'a pas fini encore. Oh, OK. Si vous pouvez attendre à la fin puis faire un rappel au règlement, ça va se passer là. Merci. Si vous avez entendu la question,
If you heard the question and were unable to vote due to technical difficulties that are now resolved, use the raise hand function and the chair will recognize you.
Anand,
Je vote contre la motion. Merci.
Ms. Anand, contre, against.
Ms. Damoff, Ms. Damoff. Okay, she's got her thumbs down.
Ms. Damoff, against, contre.
Mr. Scheer,
Mr. Speaker, I vote in favor of the motion.
can you repeat that? Your camera did not kick in.
Mr. Speaker, I vote in favor of the motion.
There we
Mr.
go.
Scheer, 4 pour.
Monsieur Lemire,
Monsieur le Président, je suis pour la motion.
Monsieur Lemire, pour, 4.
Merci.
et nous avons l'honorable député de Pointe-de-l'Île.
Je vote pour.
Vote pour.
Monsieur Beaulieu.
Est-ce que son vote a été...
Monsieur Beaulieu, pour, 4.
OK, c'est bon, merci.
Merci. C'est un bon choix.
Yes. I hear voices, but I can't see any faces. So, do you have a hands up, or can you identify yourself? Mr. Williamson?
Yes, Mr. Williamson, New Brunswick Southwest.
Okay, very good. I've got you on. How will you vote?
I heard the question.
Oh.
I heard my name called twice. I could not activate my system, so I logged in again, and I vote in favor of this this motion.
Mr.
Very
Wilson,
good. Your
4,
vote has been
4.
registered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tout est en place. No more problems? Yes, Mr. Sarai, please go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, my technical difficulties, my screen went off, I rebooted, went on, I heard the question, and I would like to vote against the motion.
Very good.
Mr. Sarai, against, contre.
Very good. So we're done, I think. Okay.
Yeas pour 179, 179. Nays contre 146, 146.
I declare the motion carried.
Channel Report.